She is Loyiso Saliso, an award winning and prominent intersectional human rights activist, and of course, Women Changing the World Award recipient. Many, many congratulations to you. Welcome to the program, and I am honored to be talking with you today. Good afternoon.
Thank you so much, Shirley, and good afternoon to you and the listeners at home. And I am so honored to have received this award. Thank you so much.
Wow, wow again. So take us back to the beginning, Loyusa. What were the defining moments or lived experiences, pardon, that shaped your journey into activism and advocacy?
So my journey wasn't anything that I had planned, to be honest, because I have about over 5 years experience within corporate. So I left corporate to follow my purpose-driven work, which is in the NGO space, activism. And it was really shaped by what I grew up seeing and also what I experienced as well, my own lived experiences. And I think I always say that I've been an activist in school because in school I noticed the systematic, inequalities in the structure of schooling where race is concerned, and I felt it even with myself because I always asked the difficult questions. Like, school is about, we tell you this, you do it. I would always ask, but then why is this being done like this? Why can't we do it? I always thought out of the box. And so for that, I became a bit of a target and, seen as somebody who's just challenging things for the sake of. But I think that I've always been that person who wants to know why things are the way they are. And so from there on, I also experienced myself. I'm a survivor of gender-based violence and
Oh,
had to play and I had to play dead in order for me to not become a stats or femicide. Um, I've also witnessed friends and family members who have become victims of femicide. I've seen inequality. I was born in Port Elizabeth, and I come from one of the most, less privileged communities, Evuku in Grogro. And, it was a community that was less privileged back then. It's become worse over the years. And I remember when I started my own organization, the first work that I did was there. Where I gave away clothes to children and so forth. So my work really wasn't planned. I left corporate because I wanted to go to bed fulfilled and wake up looking forward to the day. And that I got that from doing this particular work. So my advocacy and my activism really from a young age. I come from a political family as well, of political parents. So I really have this in my DNA, to be honest.
good on you, girl. Winning the Women Changing the World Global Awards is truly a significant milestone. What does this recognition mean to you personally, and what does it represent for your community? And how is this, I'm hoping it does, propel you forward and just make you that much more visible and that much more active in the space?
So first of all, I didn't expect the award. I was nominated in the Women Changing the World South African Awards, and I didn't expect to win that, where I won in the rural and regional areas impact in South Africa. And then I moved on to the global. And with the global, there were like almost 18 finalists in my category. So I definitely did not expect that. So I think above anything, this is a deeply meaningful recognition, but also extremely humbling. I think I've been overwhelmed with massive, massive gratitude beyond anything else. This is very thankless work that we do. So you don't expect these kinds of recognition. We just do the work because we want to see change. But also, while my name is the one that's attached to this award, I've been saying that it really represents collective work. Even, being an initiator of the 2018, the total shutdown, I may have initiated it through a Facebook post, but it was a collective that got the work done, that got us marching on the 1st of August that year. It also reflects the resilience of communities for me, the communities that I am part of, the communities that I do this work for, and I do this work with, because they continue to fight, every single day against all the odds to be seen and to be respected and, to own their dignity. And personally, it really affirms that the work matters. The work really matters. Even when it feels invisible, when it feels like nobody's hearing us, the work does matter and it is impactful. But more importantly, I would say it puts a spotlight on issues, and issues that are often ignored. And so that visibility can open doors for more support, for more resources, and for more understanding for the work that we do. Because right now, as human rights defenders, activists, advocates, we need support, we need resources and understanding, particularly with the geopolitical shift that we are experiencing in the world as well.
So your work really intersects with both human rights and obviously health rights. Can you break it down and explain to us what exactly is it that you do? And of course, you talk about the collective. So you initiate, you obviously, initiate the ideas, generate the ideas, and then sell the ideas to the people that are going to drive it forward. Give us an example of all of that.
Okay, so I identify as an intersectional human rights advocate, which means that I don't only focus on HIV prevention or only GBV, because I understand that our lives and our realities are very much layered, and you can't speak about one injustice without addressing the other injustice because they're interlinked. So for me, I do at times initiate ideas. I don't always leave them for other people to move with them. I want to be part of moving as well. I want to be part of building as well. And so that is what I normally do. And also, it's to push systems and to change systems. So the advocacy work that I do is not only work that I do through protesting. A lot of people are like, Lolo, what do you do for a living? You're a protester. And I'm like, sometimes, yes. So I do the protesting elements of it. And, I'm like, why are we just sitting and not doing anything? Let's go and, protest. But also, I'll make an example of during COVID. During COVID, when we were locked down, I was very frustrated. And I was like, there's so many injustices that are currently happening because of this lockdown. There are children who are locked in houses with their abusers, and there's so many other dynamics and realities. And I was like, but then we can't keep quiet. And the lockdown seems to have, silenced us in a way, because we would normally be out in the streets or doing something, and we were not able to do that. And so that also, I'm also an innovative thinker. Where there's a problem, I want to think of a solution more than the problem. So that's when I began doing digital advocacy, and I went in Canva and I taught myself how to do flyers and stuff. And every time I would see a story that there are people who are homeless in Cape Town who are being thrown out during lockdown, I would create a poster, I would tag the president, I would tag the government on Twitter, on everywhere that I was, and make sure that the noise is done. So that's really what my work is about, is to push back at what is being normalized. I always say I have a chronic allergy to injustice. So wherever there's injustice, trust me, I will be somewhere doing something about it. And so my work always is never really speaking on one issue as well. So I will be speaking about HIV prevention, while in the same breath, I will be speaking about gender-based violence because they interlink, and speaking about SRH because it also interlinks, but also speak about young girls who are living in rural communities, because that is where the biggest need for awareness and education is required. So that's where my intersectional scope and lens actually comes from, is understanding that we are all differently privileged or less privileged. And my fighting for, an equal world means that I don't just push myself forward, but I move forward with others as well. So if I go into a room and let's say, for example, in the room, they say they're talking about women, all women, and yet 90% is men in the room and 10% is women. And within those 10% women, already there's a problem. But then with the 10% women, there are no women living with disabilities, for example. So my voice is one that says, but where are those women in the space? I ask and say, I don't want tokenism. We can't speak about people who are not here. And so that's how I conduct my work, is to make sure that my voice is not just a me voice, but it's our voice as well.
So you talk tokenism, which we know is a huge issue in the corporate world. Very sadly, there are hundreds of thousands of marginalized women, not only from the rural areas, but also living in squatter camps or in horrendous conditions. How do we highlight their plight, and what more can be done, and how can we put fire under government's feet to recognize that we have a huge problem? Young girls and women are being marginalized, and we need to lift them out of those areas of poverty, areas of abusive relationships, areas where they don't have access to health because they've HIV positive or
Mhm.
whatever else is going on in their lives.
So, in South African contexts, I always say that we are known as the country with the most progressive constitution. And in the same breath, I also always say that yes, we do and have amazing policies. However, we do have leadership in our country that has a chronic allergy to implementation. And a lot of our solutions sit with, the leaders of this country. Multiple protests around the issues that you've raised have happened, and solutions which come in forms of memorandums or submissions have been given to them. And yet we still find ourselves fighting these things because the crisis is not getting better, it's getting worse. And so we tend to find ourselves repeating solutions, because they're not being implemented. So I think the biggest thing is that we have a leadership that has a chronic allergy to implementation. Once we start implementing these amazing policies, I know that we will start seeing a difference in people's lives, and particularly women and girls' lives. But one of the biggest gaps, adding on to that we have is the disconnect between policy and lived realities.
Yeah.
And women in rural communities, and just women generally in the world, there's a lot of work being done around gender equality. But if you look at the global south, there's still so much that is systematic oppressing women, and it's women in different spaces of life that are being oppressed. As long as you are a woman, there is a system or there is something in place to silence you, to oppress you. You can't drive a car, you can't wear this, you can't do this, and whatever you do is questioned, and we are constantly policed for existing. And so with these policies that are in places, because a lot of women contribute to these policies, there's a gap with lived realities. And so on paper, the rights do exist. The rights are there. Our constitution has them as well. But in practice, access is very limited indeed. And as you've mentioned, especially for marginalized, in health, we still see tremendous stigma. We still, around HIV, for example, we still see tremendous criminalization and exclusion that shapes who gets care and who doesn't. And so the solution isn't just in the policy, but as I've said, it's meaningful inclusion in action. And so communities must be part of designing and implementing solutions, and women must be leading in these spaces as well, not by ticking the box and tokenism that there's women here, but we need to take control of these spaces as well in order to ensure that things are happening and improving in women and girls' lives in these communities.
So it is Freedom Month, and we hope and pray that people hear your voice. Sorry, I have a frog in my throat.
Sorry.
We hear your voice loudly and clearly. But for young women and other women, not only young women who look up to you and want to follow a similar path, what practical advice would you give them about finding their voice and making an impact?
All right. So I know a lot of people want to say, oh, I'm a role model. I'm a bit wishy-washy about being a role model because it puts so much pressure on me. But also it's an honor as well to have people, young girls, look up to you. First thing that I'm going to say, which is going to be very cliche, is that start where you are with what you have. Um, when I left corporate, I didn't have a single penny. I did the work without an income for over 5 years. All I did was
Sure.
knock on doors and bulldoze doors to say, hello, Mr. Mayor, I want to do a protest in the township to raise awareness around GBV. What can your gender desk give me? Who can do what? I go to the business chamber. I'm like, you benefiting from us? What can you guys give us? We need water, we need toilets, etc., and so forth. So that's how I did fundraising. I didn't know it was fundraising. So don't wait for that big funding or for that big moment. Start where you are with what you have. Also, you don't need permission. You don't need permission to care, and you don't need permission to act. If there is something that you care about deeply, and and it worries you and it sits there. Trust me, it's planted in you, and that concern is planted in you for a reason. Don't need permission from somebody else to act on it. So if there's an issue maybe in the complex around, I'll make a very basic example around fireworks and dogs. When you know that it's about to be New Year's, send a group in the complex, a message in the complex group and say, guys, can you please let us know when you're going to put off your fireworks? Let's put the dogs in the houses, and then maybe give some tips to everybody who has a dog on how to care for their dogs during that period. Something as small as that is so important. And also, your voice doesn't have to be the loudest. I think what we've been taught is that we have to be so loud and so out there all the time. I used to think that as well, because I used to be extremely radical. But I've learned through growing in this space that it's not the loudest voice that matters, it is the most honest voice. Be honest about your work and speak your truth. And also, don't rush the process. I've been in the nonprofit space for over 13 years, and it's taken me that long to be recognized for the work that I do. So don't trust the process, but also people always say, trust the process. And I like to say, trust your process, because it's your vision and that's what's instilled in you. But also, growth takes time as well. So don't put pressure on yourself and don't compare yourselves to other people. And so does impact as well. And stay connected to your why. There's so many times I've wanted to give up on this work, where I've wanted to even go back to corporate, which takes a lot for me to get to that decision because of, the dynamics and the ups and downs in this space. But my reason why I came in to do this work in the first place always keeps me back, in doing the work and committing to it. Build a community for yourself, a safe space. I have warriors and women human rights defenders that I walk this journey with, and feminists that I love with all my heart, who have been such a safe space for me, because this work can be so draining. And also be a safe space yourself for others, and also protect your energy. But also, lastly, this work is extremely powerful work, but do understand that it's also extremely demanding. There are many days where I would come back from work, when it's dark, and I just come in and I greet my kids and I just go to my room and I shut the door, and I don't come out until the next morning when I'm leaving for work again. So it's very demanding work. Also, your mental health, take care of it, but also you need to sustain yourself in order for you to sustain the work. So believe that you can, because I know that you will. And do not wait for anyone to give you permission to do what you need to do. Stay the course.
Okay. I can't let you go without you telling me what were you doing in corporate, number one, and where from here for after having won this prestigious award. Loyiso Saliso, where to from here?
Okay, so in corporate, I started working from high school, by the way. So I went into waitressing in high school as my December jobs. And then after that, I went into work in construction. And I think my last job was in banking and also entertainment. I've worked in different industries. I've worked in office automation. I've also worked at the City of Johannesburg Property Company. So I've really dabbled in a lot of those spaces, but mainly in administrative work. In those industries. And then moving forward, I am really focused on, being committed to this work, obviously. And it's so difficult during the time that we are in right now for us as activists, because there's so much shifting with politics, with the economy, with the funder space. And so we find ourselves, being hopeless. The wars that are happening in the country that are not sensible at all. And just the hunger and all that is just anti-human rights is really eating at us as activists. I know it's eating at me. And so it requires a lot of, determination, because you find yourself becoming hopeless and wondering, what is it really that we're doing wrong? What are we missing? Because we've put in so much work. So moving forward is continuing to be resilient, but also I feel that this time really calls for us to, in our hopelessness and in our confusion, trying to figure out what do we do next and going back to the drawing board for some of us, it really requires us to pull closer together, because it's been proven historically, and it's a fact, that our power always lies in our unity. And it's beautiful when I see us uniting as the world in against what is happening that is being done to divide us. So the resilience of being united is so important. But also for me, it's moving in the direction of continuing to do work with adolescent girls and young women around SRHR and HIV prevention, as well as gender-based violence and femicide, continuing to mentor young women to be the voice for themselves. We're losing the touch of activism, the touch of advocacy in young people, and mine is to ensure that we don't lose that. That we also stand on the shoulders of women who came before us, and so I want to be a shoulder that other young girls can also stand on to move forward. So giving them the tools that they need, but also focusing in the rural communities and broadening my work in the regional space as well in Africa is so important. And recommitting myself to the movements that I've joined, like the hashtag End Femicide, which started in Kenya, of women human rights defenders. But also, I've been doing a lot of research around mental health, because right now we are in dire need of free mental health in the country, in the continent, in the world. So access to mental health services has been one of my key projects. And also I'm doing a bit of research around the link between corporate CSI and the nonprofit sector, and the meaning of the work and how we can both benefit from each other to ensure that we have an impact in communities and not just do it to tick boxes, and make sure that the work that we do is also very much sustainable. So that is really where I'm at, and I'm looking forward to more victories in this work. And above all, I think I look forward to a just world. I look forward to an equal world, and I look forward to one day, very soon, us seeing a woman as a president in the country and many other countries in the continent and the global south. Thank you.
And it might be you. I salute you, Loyiso Saliso, and I bid you farewell. It was wonderful talking to you. God bless.
Thank
and
you
good
so
luck.
much. Bless you too. Thank you. Bye.
It's 1:04 exactly. We're not going away yet. We still have an interview lined up for you. So do stay with us. We'll take a short little break, and then we'll be joined by our next guest.